Hey everybody, welcome back. This is part 3 and probably the conclusion of my NESRGB install. If you went through and watched parts 1 and 2, then part 1 you saw me removing the PPU from the PCB. That used to sit right here where the socket now sits. That took way longer than it should have, and it basically came down to I didn't have the proper tools to do the job. If you're going to remove a PPU like I tried to, I'd highly recommend getting a better desoldering gun, like one that has a vacuum pump on it, like the Hako or the Hako knockoff. Unfortunately, those are not cheap. Like the knockoff's like $100 and something. The real Hako vacuum desoldering gun is about $200. So if you're going to be doing this more than once, I really recommend getting a good desoldering gun. Or a soldering station that has a vacuum gun in it. That will make your life so much better and make life easier. Part 2 was fairly straightforward. What I had to do was I had to assemble this riser PCB. So I had to put the socket in, and then I had to build this socketed card here and what that does is that lifts the NESRGB up and moves it over so it actually fits inside a NES 101 or AV Famicom. I had to put the dip socket onto the PCB, and then finally I had to put the PPU in. That was all pretty straightforward. It was just a lot of soldering. I mean, we're talking about soldering in. I had to solder in the socket, all of its pins. I had to solder these pin strips in. I had to solder those pin strips in. I had to solder that socket in, and then after that took probably an hour to do. But you know, it was just slow, methodical, and making sure I had enough solder flux on the pins, making sure I had enough solder flowing onto the pins, and I didn't have any cold joints or any bridges. The final part of everything involved here was wiring our NESRGB to an output. When you buy an NESRGB today, it comes with a mini DIN style connector that you would find on the back of a Sega Genesis Model 2 or 3. And you could totally install that. When you remove the RF modulator from the NES, you're left with basically a 3.5mm hole. You could open that up more and put in the mini DIN connector, or if you're wanting to preserve the originality of the console, you can get a 3D printed back plate, and then you can have a mini DIN connector, or you can get a Super NES style / N64 / GameCube style AV multi-out. This piece right here was 3D printed and sold by Greg Collins at Laserberry Industries. You can check out his website. It's really cheap. It's like $13 for the backplate, the PCB, and the power jack. And you need all three of those with that mod. But with that, you don't have to cut your console up. You don't have to hack it away. And if you ever want to put this thing back to factory original, you just got to put the back panel back in it, resolder the power jack, and you're good to go. So I can't really show it here, but you can see where I ran a ribbon cable from the NESRGB. Get zoom in here. This is working in test. Come on. Zoom in. There we go. So you can see all of the pads on the NESRGB output. We have 5 volts, ground. PPU UV is the PPU's original composite output, which I'm not using. C-Sync, the red, green, blue lines. V and Y is chroma and luma, or luma and chroma. Can't remember which one is which. That's for S-video output if you wanted to use that. C is composite signal. That's the recreated signal from the NESRGB, and finally ground. B and A are audio channels from the CPU, and then O would be an audio output. I'm not using these because I'm pulling audio from a different location. I'll show that here next. if you flip the console over, gotta be very careful not to bend pins. I gotta leave this loose so I can screw the PCB back into the case. And here, zoom in here. So this area over here is where the original RF modulator is installed. So that's where it secures to the PCB. And then down here is three vias. One of these is ground, one of these is composite video unamplified, and the other one is audio. So all I did was I just took a short wire, soldered it into that via, and then soldered it to, and like I said, you can't really see in here very well, I soldered it onto the AV multi-out. And those last two pins right there is left and right audio channel. And the NES doesn't really have true stereo, so I'm not concerned about losing it. I didn't do the mod to get the audio enhancements that's in some Japanese only games, like one of the Castlevanias I know is one of them. I don't have any of those games. I don't have a desire to play a lot of those games, so I'm not missing out. That's just me. If you're somebody who is collecting a lot of classic NES games, especially Famicom games, and you want that audio enhancement, there's a mod for that. I think Voltar sells one, and there's probably other people on the internet who sell the AV enhancement mod that allows you to get the additional audio channels that's coming off the game cartridge. So that's pretty much the walkthrough around the mod. The only other mod I have is an LED light. Focus here. There we go. This is a really simple mod. There's tons of guides out there. This is if you looked at a top loading NES, there is no power light. So when you flip the switch on, you don't really know if it's on or working unless the game loads. And some games don't load. The contacts on the cartridge can be a bit not rusted, but anyway, or the contacts in the cartridge slot could have some oxidation. There's what I was looking at, oxidation. And so it may be working, but you don't know it. Maybe turn on, don't know it. So this is a really simple mod. It just puts a little LED light in the console. GameTech US has a really good guide. Basically, it just fits. There's an injection spot when they molded this case right here. It's just a little, it's a little divot, and you just drill that out, and you get a really small LED. This LED I got at a local train store hobby shop. It is tiny, and if I had the paperwork, it is a 3mm diameter LED. And this little pack from Minitronics Corp, it already comes with 2 LEDs and 2 560 ohm resistors for it. So I highly recommend putting the resistor in the circuit. By the nature of how LEDs work. The little package says you can use it up to 4 volts without the resistor. But even if you're running a low voltage circuit like 3.3 volts, I would still recommend getting a resistor and putting it in the circuit with the LED. That's just the way I was taught when I went to school. Is LEDs always need current limiting resistors. So that's pretty much the run through. I'm going to put this all back together, and then I'm going to take it over to my console area, and we'll plug it in and show it working with my projector. And I'm back. So the NES has been put back together. I don't have an RGB setup here in my house. I don't have a PVM or BVM or an OSSC or FrameMeister. I'm going straight to a projector. So what I do is from the Nintendo, I go through a set of HD Retrovision cables, the SNES style. That is then goes to a Extron Crosspoint 450 Plus distribution amp, and the output of that goes to my projector. My projector is a BenQ. The model number is HT 2050A. And this projector is great because it has 2 HDMI inputs and it has a component input. Even better, that component input supports 240p video. And I'll show that whenever I turn the console on. Even better, the game mode over a component video only adds 2 frames of lag. So I think that's really great for a digital projector. You know, it's definitely not going to be zero frames of lag like a CRT, but you know, for something that's digital, 2 frames is really good low latency for today's world. So we'll zoom in here, and I'll just go ahead and turn the console on. And as you can see, the projector is starting to detect the source. And there it is, Super Mario Bros. 3 at 240p. This is really awesome mod. I'm really happy with the NESRGB mod. It went together as good as I hoped. I knew I would have issues with the PPU getting that out, and I was really worried I would actually break something in the process. But you know, just being slow and methodical and just not rushing things, not trying to put a lot of pressure on stuff, really paid off in the end, and I'm happy to say that the installation is a success. So, hey everyone, if you like these videos, I'd really appreciate a subscribe or a like. I don't make a whole lot of videos, and the things I do make are just technical stuff that I have fun playing around with. That's going to do it for today, and thanks for watching.